Broadcasting live from somewhere beneath the New York Public Library, it's Brian and Eric Don't Belong Here. Hello to everyone listening live on twitch.tv/goblinvoice and in the future wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Brian, here as always with my handsome, unshakable colleague, Eric. What's going on, man?
Despite common belief, I am very shakeable. I'm shaking right now. Very afraid of this topic.
I'll tell you my handsome. That is not up for debate, but it's slightly shakeable. Maybe currently shook. We're once again joined by someone this week. Very excited to have her. Just one of our all-time favorite people to have on the show. Eric from Astonishing Legends in the Midnight Library. Tess Pfeifel is here.
Get out of here! I had no idea. Tess,
she was hiding behind a stack of books. Hi, Tess.
Oh my God! Wow! Holy moly!
Tess, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for hanging out.
Definitely, I can't wait to be here.
Tess, for those who don't know you, could you give a quick what's your deal, man?
Yeah, I am the producer of Astonishing Legends, which is a podcast, as well as the Midnight Library podcast, not the book. And I've been in the pod world behind the people with the mics for about 6 years now.
Wow.
Can I just say, you just absolutely knocked our now official "Hey, what's your deal, man" segment out of the park. That was incredible.
Tess, I also am afraid you are the only expert we can ever have on this show.
Yeah,
Temporary
Dr. Tess
expert.
Pfeifel.
My dad wishes.
Man, we have so much to talk about tonight that I don't want to dilly-dally too much. Let's see. So guys, I don't know if you know this. I grew up 15 minutes, maybe 15, 20 minutes from an actually famously haunted house.
I feel like I should know this.
I didn't know I was this close to it until doing research. I plugged it into Google Maps and I was like, shit, I was right there. This haunted house was lived in by some people called the Snedeker family, and they made a movie about it in 2009 called The Haunting in Connecticut. This is a famous Connecticut haunting. It was a Ed and Lorraine Warren case. Say what you will. We'll get into that. Do you guys know much about this?
I remember the movie kind of. I feel like I went to high school in Connecticut. I feel like Connecticut is kind of just overall a spooky place in a way.
It's got a spooky vibe. It's an old state. I think it's got a lot of potential for. It's easier to find spooky Connecticut stuff than it is New York stuff. I'm constantly looking for New York stuff.
Yeah.
It's because it's all secret in New York.
That's it.
That's right.
God, that's it. We just haven't busted the doors wide open on it. Tess, how familiar are you with this?
I saw this in theaters when I was in 9th grade, and I thought the main character was so dreamy. I watched it back last night, and I was like, this is a child.
It is. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
No.
I was just going to say, apropos of nothing, I was looking at images of the band Hanson the other day, and I was like, wow, these were the guys? These guys were ruining marriages?
The Hanson boys?
Yeah, those Hanson boys? Anyway.
I do believe the Haunting in Connecticut kid was a dreamboat in a couple of things. But he gets fucked up in that movie, as fucked up as someone in a PG-13 movie can possibly get.
Dark Hanson.
That's it.
The Dark Hanson. The occult Hanson. Brian, if we are one occult boy band, what are we? I feel like we're kind of have at Backstreet Boys vibes, not at all.
Yeah, the problem is there's only two of us is the thing, and there aren't many good
that is true.
two-piece boy bands.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I don't know.
I'm looking at the posters from the movie now, and I gotta say, they really lean into this kid just vomiting ectoplasm. That image just comes up relentlessly.
Before we get into the actual events of The Haunting in Connecticut, they made a sequel to the movie. And sequel I am using in the loosest possible terms. Eric, can you possibly guess what they named the sequel to The Haunting in Connecticut?
Is it The Haunting in Connecticut 2, The Hauntingest?
Even crazier.
Okay.
Buckle your asshole. The Haunting in Connecticut, Ghosts of Georgia.
What? You can't do that. That's
You can't do that.
That's ridiculous.
There is no mention of the state of Connecticut. It is completely just takes place in Georgia.
Sure.
It's branding.
That's
yeah.
But still, you can do like the haunting thing. There were ways around this.
Sure. Is it like the same Ghost Squad or anything?
No, there is no relation.
All different. Okay, gotcha. It's just a haunting in a state.
It's also directly a direct to DVD kind of equivalent thing, and Chad Michael Murray is in it.
Another dreamboat.
Another dreamboat. But The Haunting in Connecticut, the event that we're talking about tonight, I mentioned before, is kind of a more known haunting. There have been books, documentary specials. There was the 2009 movie. It's pretty everywhere. And I think it's kind of kept its grip through time because, man, it's got kind of everything. It's got ghosts. It's got exorcism. Eric, get ready for this. It's got dark necromantic magic.
Ooh, I love that. That's right up my alley.
We got the lair of a necromancer in here.
That's very fun.
So like a lot of these types of things, there are several people involved that adamantly insist this happened, and there are like just as many ardent detractors. I'm gonna tell the story first, kind of, and I think we should kind of just lean into taking it at its word, right?
Sure.
And then after that, we can kind of get into kind of the mounting evidence that it was all an elaborate hoax. Maybe not even that elaborate. Sound good?
Okay, I love that.
Mm-hmm. And we can kind of give both sides here, and everyone can decide for themselves what they actually believe. I also want to throw out there real fast, this is a bit of a weird one to talk about. The victims of the haunting, the Snedeker family, they've described some pretty disturbing incidents of a sexual nature. I'm going to avoid focusing on that during our Dumb Haha Ghost podcast, but just be on your guard if you're sensitive to that kind of thing. It might come up.
Tune in on Wednesdays for our other podcasts, Dark Ghost Sex Stuff. We like to silo those two topics into different. That's a different show.
Never the two shall meet.
No, never. Except kind of in our Viking sex magic episode.
Yeah, that one went there.
Wait, before we begin, Tess, may I ask you a general question?
Yes.
So I think you were a guest on our show many moons ago in the original incarnation of Brian and Eric Don't Belong Here, and I think we kind of covered this then. But before we dive in, and I guess Brian, stop me if this will ruin any of the mood or the vibe. But
I'm ready. I'm ready on the silence button.
Yeah. That's pretty essential, actually. One of the most important functions.
We both really need that button.
Yeah, absolutely.
To get each other with.
We need a third party. No, but Tess, what is your do you have a general kind of orientation to this stuff? Are you more on the skeptic side, the believer side, the Scully side, the Mulder side? Where do you kind of fall with regards to not this case specifically, but sort of the occult in general? And I know you've sort of had some experiences and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, just to keep it short and spooky, I don't know what's happening, but something's happening. That's kind of my approach
Sure.
before the podcast and working in it and living it. I pretty much was in it for the stories and for, the weird Reddit threads. But, as I've researched, as I've dug into things, talked to scientists, audiologists, all these things, there's definitely something going on, but I definitely consider myself a skeptic, right? Because there's no one phenomenon, even what happened to me, that I've ever taken at face value.
For sure. For sure. Interesting.
And, you know, I think I'm kind of the same way of like, I'm very open to it, but, you know.
Skeptic is not a bad word. It's not.
I agree.
Totally agree.
I agree.
Debunker is. Those are no fun nuns.
Yeah.
No fun nuns.
Even if you're right, so what? Oh, boo, I believed in something for a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was swept away. Sue me.
Right. Okay, guys. It's 1986, and the Snedeker family are from upstate New York. There's a husband, a wife, couple of kids, and they're dealing with kind of a family tragedy. Their 14-year-old son, Philip, has cancer. Obviously, a terrible stress no family wants to go through. The plan is they're going to rent a place in Connecticut to be closer to the Yukon hospital where he's receiving treatment. Budget is a concern, and they end up finding a great deal in this beautiful large house in Southington on Meriden Avenue. With it so far, and it's just really stressing out, being it's about being closer to the hospital. They're gonna make it work. Dad's gonna come down on the weekends and be at the house. But two things are notable first and foremost. The kids immediately do not like the house. Just bad vibes out the fucking gate. And Carmen, the mother, says that Philip, the sick 14-year-old, said to her, "This place is evil. We have to leave." Which I would officially say is spooky to hear from your teenager.
Sure. I'll say too, like, I feel like if your child has a serious illness, like, if nothing else, you want them in a place like it's kind of a good vibes only territory.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You want them feeling nice, feeling stress-free as much as you can.
But to her credit, like, you got to get close to the hospital. For sure. And, you know, if budget's a thing and, like, you got this family of 5, they've also taken in a niece, I believe, as well. I can see this at this point being quite a complicated situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But okay, so secondly, the second concerning thing, Al, the husband, discovers in the basement all sorts of embalming equipment and tools.
Classic.
It turns out, until semi-recently, this house was the Hallahan funeral home.
Oh, God.
It was a fucking funeral home. Eric, would that spook you, or would you? I think I'd be all right with it.
Can I actually tell? I'll tell you a very quick aside. So
Please do.
My senior year of college, I lived in a Buddhist monastery, believe it or not. But it was previously, before the monks took it over, it was a crematorium and a funeral home.
Oh, fuck.
In Brooklyn, and there was some weird shit that happened there. So I've lived in a former place like that, and there were definitely, like, it was chill, it was fine, but there was a spook factor for sure.
Oh man, okay.
I live one door down from a converted funeral home, and it's full of basement apartments. There's 3 basement apartments on the bottom. No complaints from the neighbors that I've met, but it's right on the corner across the street from a walk-up Dunkin' Donuts, which I think is more haunted.
It probably is. Fun fact, and you'll only hear this here on Brian and Eric Don't Belong Here, every single Dunkin' Donuts is haunted.
Yep.
There is at least one ghost.
That's our show thesis.
That's why the coffee's so unpredictable.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so for some fucking reason, they make the old, like, basement mortuary fill up the sick teenager's bedroom. Which I'm gonna throw out there, bad idea.
For sure. That's what I mean. It's like, I feel like you just want to stack every karmic chip on your side in this situation. You know what I mean? Like, your kid's in a bad fight, you want to, like, just really stack the deck in your favor.
In the movie does a lot of work to make that make any sort of sense, where, like, oh, the bathroom's close by.
Sure.
So the next 2 years are fucking rough for the Snedekers. The kids begin seeing people in the house, especially in the basement. They report seeing there are two figures they report seeing, like, pretty distinctly. There is a man with long dark hair and black eyes, and an older man with white hair in a pinstripe suit.
I hate that more. Okay.
Yeah, no thanks. No thanks.
Yeah.
So Philip frequently hears whispering in the house, often a male voice repeating his name or beckoning him back down into the basement.
Okay.
Yeah, no thanks. No thanks.
Not
Here's another thing that's like, all right. Al removes the light bulbs in several rooms in attempt to save money on some electricity, but multiple family members report seeing lights flickering in several rooms anyway.
Can I just say something? That is the ultimate dad named Al move.
100%.
It's like, Ghost, this light bill's scaring the pants off of me. We're getting rid of half these bulbs.
Just the most Al move.
That's maximum Al.
One of the brothers reports seeing his sister playing with the light switch, turning the lights on and off. She runs out of the room and down the stairs. He comes down the stairs to learn that his sister's been in bed for like an hour.
Oh,
Just proper spooky shit. So Al and Carmen believe the kids are just spooked by the funeral home thing, and they largely don't believe what's being told. Which I feel is a mistake.
Yeah.
If all your kids are saying we're seeing spooky shit, maybe it's time to consider something spooky's happening.
Yeah.
So eventually, after many, many rounds of like very difficult treatment, Philip's cancer goes into remission. Obviously wonderful, but things on the haunted front take a turn for the even worse. Philip's mood starts growing worse. He's making disturbing drawings, and he's writing a lot of poetry with a necrophiliac theme.
Okay.
Which
Yikes.
is concerning. The family writes this off kind of as like dealing with the fallout of, nearly dying from a terrible terminal disease. But it's when Philip attacks his cousin Tammy. The doctors have to get involved. Philip is diagnosed with schizophrenia and is sent to be treated at a psychiatric hospital for several, which is just heartbreaking, right? Like, you go through this cancer thing, and it's terrible.
Is he still battling the cancer at this point?
The cancer goes into remission.
Okay, gotcha. But then replaced with this terrible other thing.
Right.
So when you said necrophiliac poetry, by the way, I just had an image of him like with bongos, like presenting to his family these poems he wrote, and just people like throwing up in the plants. Like, gather round, Philip's gonna read from his diary.
Oh no!
Yeah.
With the little hat. What's the hat? The beret.
Yeah, exactly.
If I were clever at all, I'd say everyone has to write a necrophiliac poem right now, but that will be here all night.
Yeah.
Tess, what's going through your brain right now? Because you said you watched the movie recently. This is the necrophiliac poetry didn't make the movie.
No, they left that out, and the insane asylum part
in
the 80s.
Yeah.
Wait,
God, that's true.
How old is Philip at this point?
Philip, let's see, it's between 14 and 16.
Okay.
Just tough.
Yeah.
But Philip warns Carmen, his mother, it's gonna come for you now.
Ugh.
As he's sent away for several weeks. And what do you know? Things start getting a little crazier. Al and Carmen report hearing loud, discordant music blasting in the house late at night, not coming from anywhere. Let's see. Carmen mops the floor and reports the water momentarily seems to become blood.
That's a thing.
The documentary. What's that? What do you mean it's a thing?
That's a very popular possession of a house or poltergeist thing is the transformation of natural substances into other natural substances. So in the Black Monk of Pontefract, it starts snowing in the house.
Oh, interesting.
And there's puddles everywhere. Yeah, ghosts like wet stuff. So
ghosts love wet stuff. Ghosts love that wet stuff. Eric, the water park.
That's ectoplasm. It's all they have.
Eric, so if this is your first time listening to the show, Eric has said in the past, I'm obsessed with this, clearly. Eric has said, I asked him what he would do first thing if he was a ghost, and he said haunt a water park. Eric, would you turn the wave pool into blood, or is that too much? Is that too far?
That's a great it depends on the extent of my powers, I think. But no, I think I want to keep it water because I want to keep everybody there just hanging out.
Right, that's true. You can't just give it away. You can't just make it a haunted water park.
That's right.
Then it becomes a tour. Then they're no longer not expecting it, and that's half the fun of being a ghost at a water park.
Exactly. Bango. Yeah,
glad we figured that out.
Uh-huh.
I can't believe that has to come up every episode.
It certainly does.
Okay, so here's another kind of classic haunted house thing you'll hear a lot of. Carmen also reports several incidences of plates and cabinets moving on their own. She sets the table and the plates put themselves away or take themselves out when she's looking away. Pretty classic. See that in Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Here's a big one. Here's a real game changer. Carmen is attacked in the shower by an invisible force, seemingly trying to suffocate her with the shower curtain. She is saved by her niece Tammy during this event. There are a bunch of other kind of disturbing incidences. I mentioned I was going to keep those things kind of light. But basically, both Al and Carmen report that they have been sexually abused by spirits in the night. Which, maybe it's time to go.
For sure. You know what's interesting about this, and Tess, maybe you could speak to some of this, is I feel like this falls into a very classic spirit attack or poltergeist pattern where it feels like it kind of gains momentum and power. Like it starts as little sounds and maybe visions or hallucinations, and then it starts to ramp up where it's like, they're changing water into blood, they're moving plates around, and then it escalates to actual physical attacks. Like it kind of snowballs into something more and more tangible as they go.
Well, the more we notice something, the more they notice us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
So that's usually the belief. It's kind of the same thing that saying in exorcism movies and stuff, a demon's name is really powerful. That reference, that understanding of who and what something is really powerful. And that state of unknowing, of human unknowingness when we come into contact with these things, just leads us into a state of denial and acceptance. And they just feed off that chaos. It's the same reason why a lot of poltergeist stories center around children going through puberty.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense, right? That's a very...
It's emotional and cancer, and they kind of touch on that in the movie, these points where we're just hormonally, physically, biologically in chaos. That chaos comes into us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. This actually kind of, I think, ties into what we were just talking about. The Snedekers reach out to a priest. There are a couple of Catholic churches in Southington. I did the Google mapping. St. Thomas is the one right around the corner, so I assume it was someone from there. But Catholic priest basically tells them to ignore it. The evil feeds on the fact that they're giving it attention. And this, that I literally have written in my notes here, this aligns with some of the things we've heard. The Snedekers, however, do not like this advice. Hi, if you're just joining us, this is Brian and Eric Don't Belong Here. We're talking about the haunting in Connecticut, a haunted house in Southington, Connecticut that I lived 15 minutes from. We're here, of course, with Tess Pfeifel from Astonishing Legends. And we've learned all about this terrible haunting the Snedeker family has dealt with. Let's see. Okay, so the Snedeker family does not like this advice. That's not good enough. Which, it's in the safety of our homes right now, of our hopefully unhaunted homes. That makes a lot of sense. I feel like if I was dealing with a ghost situation, maybe I would also not be happy with the priest telling me, just ignore it.
Yeah, you want some
do
homework.
Something. Exactly. 100%.
Just walk around with a rosary and say you did something. Maybe
Yeah.
So the Snedekers are desperate for a more proactive approach. Carmen reaches out, of course, to famous Connecticut ghost hunters Ed and Lorraine Warren. Dun, 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 dun. I'm a Connecticut boy, so obviously I'm a big fan of the Warrens. Some heavy skunk on that, but you may be familiar with the Warrens. They a fictionalized version of them are the main characters of the Conjuring franchise of films that have made a lot of money. And so the whole thing is that Lorraine Warren was a powerful clairvoyant, able to see and speak to spirits. Ed is a self-taught demonologist and sort of serving as like a consulting Sherlock Holmes for the Catholic Church when dealing with demon situations. Their home is the largest private collection of haunted objects, and they are, of course, the in-laws of patron saint of Brian and Eric, Tony motherfucking Sparrow.
Tony motherfucking Sparrow. Can I say what a tragedy it is that that they were not like a power couple in the age of Instagram? Like how amazing their Instagram would have been.
Truly.
We really missed that.
It's I'm sure when we take a look at later kind of the ways they utilized television, you can definitely maybe get an assumption of how well they would have done in our God, they would have had a podcast and it would have been way better than ours, Eric.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Well, let me ask you like a context question here. So it's around this time in Connecticut. I'm going through some kind of haunting or some kind of occult activity. How do I find the Warrens? Like, how do I even know they're a thing? Do they have like newspaper ads? Are they a sort of are they kind of celebrities, or what's the deal?
So we're in like 1986, 1987. The Amityville Horror has happened. And was a nationwide phenomenon. And of course, they were highly, highly tied in with that.
Gotcha.
They also gave a lot of talks at colleges, like near weekly, and libraries and those things. Yeah.
So smart.
Wow. My mom, when she was in high school, went to one of their talks and said it was weird.
Oh, you told me about that, dude. Yeah. That's right.
So the Warrens, of course, are happy to come in, and they assess kind of the dark secrets of this house. And what Ed Warren says is that this funeral home was apparently an operation for satanic necromancy ceremonies and necrophilia. A lot of angry spirits here are basically all of the defiled and disrespected deceased trapped here.
Naturally.
I can't find anything specifically tying it, but I assume I mentioned the kids seeing this high cheekbone, black-eyed, black-haired figure and an older man like figure. Yeah. Assume evolved to that somehow.
Got it.
So now here. We'll get into it out. There's some obvious questions here, and we'll get into it pretty soon. So the Warrens and their team spend the next couple of weeks in the house gathering all of the evidence that they can, so that they can request an exorcism from the Catholic Church. Exorcisms, of course, are incredibly rare, and there's this wildly high bar to clear to be granted one. So they spend weeks, the entire family and the investigative team, like in the living room, sleeping on couches and stuff, gathering what information they can so that Ed Warren, who apparently just has a fucking through line to the Hartford Archdiocese, and was instrumental in getting a couple of exorcisms performed. So John Zaffis, a paranormal investigator and frequent collaborator of the Warrens, he apparently sees a demonic apparition in the basement that shakes him so much he quits. He straight up leaves the investigation.
Oh my god.
He's in several of the documentaries. He's like, nope, I saw someone in the basement. It was terrible. I don't want to talk about it. I fucking left.
Wow.
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
Let's see here. So the details are a little unclear moving forward here, but Ed manages to secure an exorcism from the Catholic Church. The exorcism is performed on September 6th, 1988, and according to the Snedekers, all the spooky paranormal activity ceased after that point. And that's the haunting in Connecticut. I would now like to open up the floor for questions, because, boy, I have some.
So do we have more information on what happened like during the exorcism itself?
Not really. It seems that it went off without kind of a hitch. It went fine. It dispelled all the angry spirits.
So what do they perform the exorcism sort of on the house itself, not a particular like
that is the Warrens do say, and that's a thing that I have also had questions about. According to the Warrens, spirits can possess objects.
Sure.
To some capacity. I think a lot of the paranormal community disagrees with that. Tess, do you know anything about that?
I don't know a lot, but I think, if you believe in this grand unified theory of the paranormal, the things that we are afraid of will map to things we're familiar with. So I think the fact that we're now starting to see stories of haunted computers and phones and stuff is maybe the ghosts getting smarter. So maybe they're not actually possessed, but that mental unwellness of thinking, a doll or a box or whatever is talking to you could contribute to their power, even if it's not technically possessed.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
I mean, it kind of makes. I feel like there's certainly many stories of haunted objects. You know what I mean? Like different artifacts or things that become cursed or haunted. So it kind of
the Annabelle, of course, in the
exactly
Warrens Museum.
Exactly.
Speaking of that, I recently watched. Let's see, Annabelle. I watched both Annabelle Creation and Annabelle Comes Home. I quite liked both.
Okay.
I thought they were silly fun times, but dude, Eric, you're not going to believe it. I was so excited. I almost texted you like in all caps. Our boy Tony Spera gets a little cameo in a character.
Does he?
A little boy character is shadowed to be Tony Spera. And
incredible.
I got up on my couch and like screamed for my wife.
He's coming on the pod. We're gonna get him on the pod.
He's coming on the pod. So I found out last year there was Paranormacon hosted by Tony Spera in Waterbury, Connecticut, and if it happens again, if it's happening this year, we're going.
Dude, I was gonna go to Paranormacon at the start of the pandemic, and it was canceled. And of course,
this was a different one, right? This was
This was at a high school in New Jersey. So I don't know. Which I think is the only place you're actually legally allowed to hold a paranormal convention. So
yeah, can't imagine another place.
Yeah, no.
Amazing, dude. But this Tony Spera Paranormacon, Annabelle was there last year. And we gotta go. We gotta go.
Yeah, we definitely do. I'm super game. Wow.
And then we'll become friends with Tony Spera. He will let us hang out in the museum, and he'll let us do a show from the museum.
I think so. I don't see why he wouldn't do that.
No, it's chaos magic. I'm going to manifest this into being.
Hell yeah.
So now we have a whole...
Can I just tell
Please.
you? I'm on Tony Spera's Instagram right now. Of his top 6 posts, one is I stand with Ukraine banner, one is a close-up of sausage and peppers, and one is him in an all-white suit. That's my social media.
Oh my God, I love Tony Spera so much.
Fucking rules. Tony's the greatest guy. Awesome. Okay.
God, what a man.
Yeah. The caption to the sausage and peppers post is, "Yeah, I'm Italian."
Tony. Oh, I love it.
The best. Okay, love it. Sorry.
Okay. Let's see. So there's a whole media blitz around the haunting in Connecticut. So we get a book. We get a couple of documentaries. We get a whole bunch of media appearances, of course, side by side with Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now we have some debate here. So here's the thing. The book was called In a Dark Place. And the writer of In a Dark Place, so I'm actually going to Google right now because I didn't write it down like an idiot. In a Dark Place, searchy. I can't find it. But he immediately kind of separated himself from the veracity of the book. He says that, so he did some interviews with the Snedeker family, and he says that like a lot of their stories didn't really line up. Sure. And when he went to Ed Warren with this, Ed Warren reportedly said, "Who cares? They're crazy. Take what you got, make it spooky."
Whoa.
Which is pretty damning, right?
Well, let me ask you this question, and not to cast aspersions here.
I think we're in that part where that's fair game.
Okay, well, I'm going to cast some aspersions. No, isn't it? Isn't this a potentially recurrent theme with the Warrens, like some kind of potential collaboration with the subjects of the haunting or the victims of the haunting?
This seems to be the way the Warrens kind of keep the money rolling in.
Sure.
Well, the author, it was a horror novelist. So this is technically the way it was sold, as a nonfiction novel, which is an oxymoron.
Right.
Fair point.
Tess, you threw down a note. It's Ray Garton. Ray Garton is the name of the author. I have read in places and on Twitter that he sometimes roasts people who talk about the haunting in Connecticut. So
yeah, he gives some very interesting interviews. I was looking at it last night because I didn't remember the Warrens weren't mentioned at all in the movie, and I was like, that's weird. That's usually like an easy cash grab. But I think it's because there was some kind of like, not NDA, but some kind of writing agreement, because the Warrens only hired ghostwriters. They never actually wrote any books themselves or anything. No. And they hired a lot of the time novelists as writers, because no one ever said this, but of course they are more imaginative than maybe your typical historical, biographer.
The thing about a lot of the Warren stories is that the only real source we have is Ed fucking Warren,
Right.
And Ed keeps coming across all these demons that only he can fight. I'd argue in a lot of ways that the Warrens weren't like selling anything people weren't buying, but I think overall it's kind of harmless. I mean,
it's kind of a great deal. Like, imagine you live in sort of a weird house. You hit up the Warrens. They sit you down and they're like, "Look, this is all fake, but we can all get rich, and we're going to tell a good yarn that kids are going to talk about on a podcast like 30 years from now."
And like, I think there is some like complicated stuff under the surface, but like that in of itself does not bother me at all. Sure. Like I said, not selling anything people aren't buying. Exactly. But there is some additional disputes though. The Snedeker family also does not like the book, and sort of disputes the book. They do not agree that it is entirely accurate. Carmen has said in the past, it was like she just had to give somebody else permission to tell their story. So she's also and she now has issues with the Warrens. She feels like they were used by the Warrens to propel their fame, rather than actually kind of help her family, which are interesting fighting words to throw down, I think.
For sure.
So here's kind of what I would actually like to do now is I'd like to pull up a clip. Does that sound good?
That'd be great.
I have here an episode of Sally Jesse Raphael, which was a daytime syndicated talk show, largely of like the tabloidy variety. I'm sure this probably aired around between 2 and 4 p.m., you know? It's going to be buck wild. I've seen it before. I don't think there's anything too sensitive at this point. I think we've passed it. But be on your guard if you're particularly sensitive, because some things might get mentioned that I talked about earlier. Give me a moment here to pull up the clip here. Let's, of course, remember that this is an audio podcast, and the people listening won't be able to see the video like the people live can right now, but they'll be able to hear it.
And Carmen and their family about a chilling story. They wrote a book about it called In a Dark Place.
This is Sally
The Story of a
talking.
True
We see
Haunting.
the book.
And they wrote this book along with Ed and Lorraine Warren, who have been with us before. They are the professional Ghostbusters, who Al and Carmen said saved their lives. Ed, you both launched an investigation into the house, and you discovered a very shocking thing that actually happened in the funeral parlor involving the bodies. What happened?
Well, we feel
If you're
through our
used to
investigation
Patrick Wilson
that
in the
necrophilia or
in
yeah.
the Conjuring movies, Ed Warren does not
had occurred
quite
in that home. Not necessarily by the undertaker.
match
It could
that.
be anybody
Patrick
that went
Wilson
in
is a
there.
very attractive
Now,
man, and Ed
this
Warren
case
is Ed
was
Warren.
not as isolated as these three people would have us think. We have over
This
70
show has brought on
cases
deniers,
very
like their
similar to
neighbors,
the
who are like,
Pfeifels.
"You're
And
lying."
remember that the church was involved in this.
Who was the priest? Everyone seems to have
Okay,
a
we
disagreement.
can tell you that the chancellery was involved. The priest that was involved, there was a Father A who was on 2020. And there was also 3 other priests, and this can be borne out through the official records of the chancellery in Hartford.
Yes.
How about a name? Just one name.
I don't have
Give
to
a
you
name, a
Why
full
should
name.
we give
I
you
can
a name?
prove-
These are secret things. We
It's-
are
if
Catholic,
it's
and we
secret, you're
respect.
sitting here talking about being raped and sodomized by some sort of entity, but you won't
was all
give a
backed
name.
up. It
I'm
was all
telling you
backed
what
up.
happened to me.
All
I'm not
backed up.
telling
We had
you. You
seen
gotta
this.
believe me.
We had
I am
investigators.
just telling you what
Were you
happened.
in the house? Were you in the
I was
house when it
standing,
was going
I
on?
lived across the street before you
Were
people
you in
moved
the
in.
house
I
when it
still
was
live
going
there.
on?
One of the ones that came around the house go boo boo through the window.
No,
Yeah.
once you
Yeah,
guys
sounds
start
like
doing this and it
something
gets to the paper.
It's-
Oh,
It's pretty Jerry Springer-esque, for lack of a better word. But you know, you kind of get a sense there of Ed's general demeanor of, there are records. I'll be gone by the time you try
Yeah,
to
yeah,
find
yeah.
any.
That is hilarious. That the guy was like, "How about a name?"
So it's a lot of that. But so here's where I'm kind of sitting on it, maybe. Based on kind of what we have, based on the infighting that has happened among kind of the writer, the Warrens, and the Snedeker family, I think maybe the Snedeker family believes something happened in their house. Do I also think maybe that was elaborated on, sensationalized, for the sake of cash? Because let's not forget, the Amityville Horror has happened. That book, that movie, there are now been several movie sequels. Surely pretty good purchase for everybody involved. And part of me like imagines here there's an element of Ed putting on his tan coat and just like, well, where's the haunted house this week? You know?
Yeah.
Kind of like we can re-up that. I also think we're at a interesting height in American culture where, you know, in the 80s, we're kind of in this like post Ronald Reagan era. Religion is down. Kind of core American nuclear family values are up. And we have a lot of anxiety of like, the kids don't really like religion.
Right.
And I think that maybe ties into some of these fears, if you will, of like of the haunted house, of the the devil comes home, if you will. The state of Arizona in the chat asks, was this the satanic panic era? I think we're certainly on the tail end of what we think of as the satanic panic. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
But overall, I don't know. I think the Snedeker family was certainly haunted by something, even if not spirits. You've got a 14-year-old with cancer, and then later a schizophrenia diagnosis. You're hard up for money. You've got an opportunity here that is heavy on a family, I think.
For sure. Yeah, I think even just the stress of the illness and having a child go, sink into a deep mental illness like schizophrenia, that's probably going to create, just from the stress alone, like some weird perceptions of that. I don't know what else may or may not have happened, but that alone is going to that's going to create some stuff in your reality. I feel like that's not particularly pleasant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that ties into, it's the author, Ray Garton, talked about how there were inconsistencies in their story when he was writing the book. It's hard to get a straight fact of a straight record of what happened. Even my little summary, I had to take little liberties in order to make it make sense. Mm-hmm. They're talking about the sexual assault by the spirits, and that's happening but they're also saying they're saying we're being sexually assaulted by spirits, but they're also saying we don't believe our kids when they're saying they're seeing ghosts. And it's all the stuff doesn't quite line up.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting.
I think with storytelling too, though, with paranormal events, one thing that's important to remember is have you ever tried to retell a story from a time you were terrified? Or even describing the first 6 months of the pandemic to someone, what you did.
Absolutely.
Our minds kind of fail to we can usually have gestalt images and narratives, and we can piece things together. But when something disrupts our reality, it warps our ability to tell a narrative because time or being is no longer A to B.
Man, Tess, that is a phenomenal
100%. 100%.
I didn't even think of it that. Yeah, it's and I think that ties into I don't know. We also can't find. I mentioned earlier, a necromancer performing dark arts in the basement of this funeral home. We have no record of that. No employee has anything of can't even point out a dude who was weird. I think it'd be pretty difficult to hide a satanic necromancy operation, right?
I would say so, especially just the amount of liquids it would take. Because remember, I know we got a lot of eyelids in the movies, and that is technically kind of a thing. But the biggest drive and magical power in necromancy isn't just blood, it's spit and sweat and period blood and all these things. If anyone's seen Midsummer, that's literally actual love potion thing.
Ooh.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Not very romantic.
I'm good.
No thanks. Some other kind of debunky things. Let's see. As also is kind of the case with some of these, no one else has reported any incidences in the house, which can explain they did apparently have a successful exorcism. But what does not come up in certainly doesn't come up in the movie, was that the house was a duplex. There was somebody else living. There was another person living in the adjacent apartment. And they had no issues.
Yeah, I was fine. I had a great time. Zero blood water.
Well, one thing I find interesting about the cases the Warrens tend to take on is there's usually children in the home. Almost in all of them, or especially if you think of the big ones, the Conjuring house, the Enfield poltergeist, even with Annabelle, that being a child's toy and children being involved and their own child allegedly maybe being involved with it. And it makes me wonder, because if you do believe any of this at all, most poltergeists, most what people believe as true, or at least hard to contest poltergeist, happenings tend to just peter out because the children leave puberty. So is it Ed Warren, or are children just growing up? Like, we even saw in this story, I assume, like, all the children aged 2 to 5 years. So if they're all out of puberty, maybe the activity, if there was any, did die down.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, you kind of can't argue with that. Once again, if there was any, my guess would be, because Carmen Snedeker does still maintain that some version of this happened to her family. And my guess would be there was a story that has spiraled maybe either out of control, maybe the facts and the fiction have blurred, or maybe it is all whole cloth. I don't know. Eric, what do you think overall? What are your kind of blanket thoughts on this whole haunting that I was 15 minutes away from growing up?
So crazy. I think, well, what I think is really interesting. So there's a parapsychologist I really like, this guy named Stanley Krippner. And one of his theories is that a lot of charlatans and frauds and hoaxsters, there may be some like kernel of ability or truth to the stuff they do, or they may be drawn to real phenomena, but it's so unpredictable and so difficult to control that they kind of like learn to capitalize on it, or learn to come up with little parlor tricks and stuff. So specifically, this is in the context of like psychics. I mean, like you saw, Brian, when we did our remote viewing exercises, like you actually had some crazy hits.
It was kind of it was really, really nuts.
Really strange, but it was also a little bit unpredictable. And as we continued on, it felt like it started to peter out a bit. But like, imagine if you were doing that professionally and you had to produce results every time. You might come up with ways to, say, collaborate with the audience or generate results or do cold reading. So I kind of like this idea with the Warrens that like maybe they find something where there is a little something there, and then they just have this brilliant way of capitalizing it and marketing it and getting book deals and like collaborating with the people involved. But there's a little fire with all that smoke, maybe.
Yeah.
I also have zero proof of that. It could just be like complete fucking bullshit from top to bottom.
It's very funny. Their general, like Ray Carton broke kayfabe, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
The wrestling, right. And this, like, so they have to kind of, you can see in interviews with them, they kind of work that into the storyline.
Yes.
Which I think is very funny. Tess, do you have any overall kind of thoughts on this?
I think maybe kind of something happened, but I'm, again, not sure if it was narrativized too much, or maybe it's something that happened over the course of a week, which would still be terrifying, even if it was a week and not 2 years. But I don't believe the whole cloth. However, I do think some of the confused storytelling might be, part of lived trauma. And on top of that, I also think the Warrens, whatever you want to say about them, I think Lorraine maybe did have some significant talent. And it's hard to argue that most of their cases didn't have some kind of kernel or some kind of real, if not less than, phenomena. And I think Ed had a real knack of picking, cases that were just about to peter out and taking credit when maybe it's just the supernatural way of things and not really, an exorcism. Like, I really like that the movie made the Reverend kind of like non-denominational. I thought that was really cool.
The Reverend character, of course, in the Haunting in Connecticut movie is played by Elias Koteas, who I know as Casey Jones in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, baby.
Oh, that's crazy.
There is a scene in this fucking movie where it's not a very good movie. But there's a scene in the movie where Elias Koteas' Reverend character performs the exorcism on the house and accidentally makes it worse. So around 10 minutes later, the mom is explaining to the kids, everything's okay now. And then goes downstairs to find his name is not Philip in the movie, but is covered in immaculate necromantic runes, like carved into his skin. And she grabs him and goes, "What did you do to yourself?" And I'm just going to throw this out there. If there's an exorcism performed on my home, and 10 minutes later, you find immaculate necromantic runes carved into my skin, please do not assume I did them myself.
That is like the ultimate form of victim blaming.
And it's shocking to see because she like shakes him in the movie. And I'm like, he's covered in blood. He's covered in open wounds.
How would this even be possible? These are precision surgically inscribed. It's incredible.
I do not think that happened in real life.
I would say it definitely did not. The Conjuring movies do this. Like a lot of true stories do this. At the end of a movie that's based on a true story, they might show pictures of like the real family or the real place.
So good.
This movie shows black and white photos that they seem to be implying are the real ones, but super are not. Straight up the sets from the movie.
Oh my God.
But they're in black and white and like a little faded. So they're like, yeah,
I wonder if the current owners were like, absolutely not. Under no circumstances.
Well, I think in reality, the current like house just isn't that spooky. I'll post about.
Duplexes aren't scary. They're very approachable.
Duplexes are not scary. Tess, are you willing to put down right now on the record on this barn burner, record-breaking Brian and Eric that everyone will listen to? Ghosts cannot haunt duplexes.
Oh.
Ghosts can't knowingly haunt a duplex. They might not have been duplexes when they were living.
Oh, got it. Got it. So that's okay. So maybe duplexes are the easiest place to exercise. Ed Warren can just go in and like, yo, this is a duplex. You can't be here. And that ghost like, oh man, sorry. Go grab the hat. Gotta go.
And the pinstripe suit. Don't forget about that detail. Which
Yes,
how would a child even know what that is?
Great question. Oh, the probably not haunting in Connecticut. Eric, we are lucky in that we are geographically very close to the state of Connecticut where the Warrens worked out of. So I feel like this is just the tip of the iceberg of Warren cases that we're going to kind of go over the course of the show.
We got to cover all of them eventually.
We got to cover all of them, right? It's
our Mount Rushmore of
yeah, dude. This has to be just the tip of the iceberg of a greater Warren investigation series. And maybe we'll come to some conclusions. Tess, maybe you're right that there were more kernels than outright fabrications. Maybe we'll find otherwise. But our investigation has only begun.
I will say this, Tess. You said something very interesting. You said that you suspected that Lorraine Warren may have actually have some talent for clairvoyance or something else. What makes you say that?
Because she didn't talk as much as Ed, and I know that sounds silly. No. But in all of the stories that I've covered, even from newer ones like the Bet Sphere to things like the Bell Witch haunting, there's always been a hesitancy or a light way of explaining it, a way of normalizing in your speech where you try to make it seem normal and not that big of a deal that I feel like she had when speaking off the cuff, less so in things that I've heard that are recorded. But in interviews and stuff, there just seems to be a sort of genuineness. And I also think that may be how, people trust her, right? Because talking about the paranormal is an act of trust.
Sure.
For sure. Interesting.
Very, very interesting. Who might have great insight? Tony Sparrow, who we're definitely going to get on this podcast at some point, even if we have to ambush him at the Paranormacon Waterbury, Connecticut, 2022, baby.
We're doing it, bro. Have you seen anything? I was looking for Paranormacon stuff. Have you seen anything yet?
Just the one that was last year.
Yeah.
But we're going to all of it, baby. We're going to all the Eastern ones. Every single New Jersey high school that is hosting a Paranormicon will be there, baby. The only place you can legally host a Paranormicon in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah, at a high school, 100%.
I think that wraps us up. Am I missing anything? Am I forgetting anything? Are we ready to get out of here?
Yeah, I think this was incredible. This was a crazy, eye-opening episode.
It's a pretty wild story. Tess, thank you so much for helping us out with your insight. Tess, where can everybody find you on the internet?
You can find me at Tess Pfeifel on Twitter, and then all of the Astonishing Legends handles, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, newly, under Astonishing Legends, and of course in your feeds there. Additionally, I'm going to plug two things really quick.
Do it.
One, the Astonishing Legends blog. We got 500 posts there of things too small to be episodes, so check that out if you're ever bored. And another
Eric and
thing,
I are just going to steal from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things too small to be episodes? Not for me and Eric.
We're on it.
I have a suggestion after the show for your next topic that I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on.
Ooh,
and if you want to hear a Warren story without the Warrens in it and without any research about the Warrens in it, Astonishing Legends has a 3-part Conjuring series that we released this summer.
Ooh.
Oh, it's great. It's excellent.
Thank you.
I can't wait to listen to that.
I would recommend. Yeah.
I just rewatched the movie.
It's awesome.
Tess, thank you so much again. We really appreciate you coming here. Eric, is that it? We ready to get out of here?
I think that's it. Tess, thank you so much again. This was amazing.
Thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff.
Hell yeah. We hope you come back again soon. That's going to wrap up this broadcast for the night. Remember, you can tune in live Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/Goblin Voice, or find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We want to thank Purple Planet and Carl Kasey at White Bat Audio for the use of their music. Do you want to get in touch with us? You can join our Discord channel, follow us on Twitter at Brian and Eric Pod, visit our blog at briananderic.show, or email us at spookybriananderic@gmail.com. For both of us here at Brian and Eric Don't Belong Here, thank you for listening, and stay safe out there.